We reached 7,000 subs, guys! Well, knock me down with a feather. We've reached another milestone.
Cha-ching! Woo!
And as such, I'll be taking a look at another highly requested game. As voted for by you, it's Tak and the Power of Juju. Rock on! This is a pretty interesting one. While most games I've covered on this channel are based on movies and TV shows, this game is a little different, as the game came first and later inspired a TV show, all about Tak and his adventures with the Pupanunu people. The show wasn't well received and was cancelled after just one season.
Oh, come on!
But the games are still fondly remembered.
Sweet!
The question is this game any good or a steaming pile of Pupanunu?
What is it going to take to get into contact with a powerful Juju spirit from another world? It worked!
The game begins with Jibolba, the Pupanunu shaman, who's summoned us for help. He informs us about the moon Juju, the Pupanunu protector and source of Juju power.
She's strong and nice and so beautiful.
But the evil Tlaloc, who practices bad juju, seeks revenge for not being elected the shaman himself. Along with his henchmen Pins and Needles, it's revealed that he's stolen the moonstones from the moon temple, depriving the moon Juju of her power. Tlaloc then uses the moonstones to turn the people into sheep, for some reason, effectively pulling the wool over their eyes. But Jibolba remains hopeful, as prophecy tells that a mighty warrior will save the moon Juju.
His name is Locke. Tak! What are you doing?
You told me to go get Locke.
Our protagonist Tak then arrives with a sheep and concludes that the sheep is actually Locke, as it's wearing his amulet.
Stop the licking, Locke! Oh, this is terrible.
In light of this horrifying news, Jibolba then gives us some very clear instructions.
Go with Tak to the ancient burial ground of our ancestors and put the teeth into the statues. And get me some magical nubu plants while you're out.
What? Burial grounds? Teeth? Nubu plants? What the hell is this guy going on about? Yeah, already there is a lot of exposition here. I swear I can't be the only one who feels like this is a bit of an information overload.
Hello, Tak.
Anyway, here we're introduced to Flora, daughter of the moon Juju.
You seem smart enough to figure this out on your own, but you move yourself around by using the left analog stick.
She teaches us the basics, including double jumping and close combat moves.
Just press the square button to swing the club.
There's nothing particularly noteworthy here other than the choppy editing of Flora's instructions.
You can throw any item you pick up by just tapping the square button.
It's painfully obvious they wanted to record different instructions for the various platforms this game was released on, as whenever a particular button is mentioned, it's clearly a separate recording.
And if you need to jump, it's as simple as pressing the X button.
You can jump by pressing the X button. This is a pretty standard tutorial in which Flora shows you the ropes, quite literally.
There'll be plenty of places in the world where you'll have to use ropes.
Tak can climb and swing on ropes and vines to get around, although I really think this could feel less clunky. Tilting the analog stick left and right makes Tak rotate around the rope, which just doesn't feel natural to me. You can swing back and forth by facing a certain direction and holding the square button. It's okay, but it feels a bit, ropey, so to speak. In fact, generally speaking, Tak's controls feel quite stiff and awkward, and it's often difficult to get Tak to cover a lot of distance with his jumps. It just doesn't feel fluid. It takes a great deal of effort to build momentum, and as such it's often hard to avoid attacks and get the first move in when engaging in combat. And as if this wasn't annoying enough, Tak just doesn't seem to shut up with his constant wannabe Cusco mimicry.
Booyah!
Booyah!
Seriously, I swear whoever scripted this dialogue was a fan of the Emperor's New Groove. Call it a hunch.
Boom, baby!
Boom, baby!
The main enemies in this game are Nurbles, weird little pests that infest the village. There are standard purple ones that run up to you and attack you,
Nice!
as well as their tougher yellow variants that take twice as long to beat.
Nice!
You know, just in case you didn't think they were annoying enough. There are some that throw projectiles at you from a distance, and there are bat-like flying Nurbles, whose nests are often above ground and as such are difficult to destroy. But the toughest are the armoured Nurbles. These are huge! Most of these will try to electrocute you, and are only made vulnerable when they do so. But there are also some that act as Nurble spawners, deploying smaller Nurbles from their mouths.
Boom shakalaka.
When these large nurbles are defeated, they split into 3 small nurbles. So that's how baby nurbles are born. Personally though, I think the most irritating are what I call the kamikaze nurbles. These explodent rodents will run towards you and explode. Regardless of what nurbles are around, you're pretty much guaranteed to get hurt. The unresponsive hit detection is extremely aggravating, especially considering just how prolific the nurbles are. Honestly, they are relentless. Your health is represented by the feather on Tak's head. As he receives damage, the feather will gradually turn purple. Collecting feathers will restore Tak's health and ensure he remains, well, in good feather.
Gotcha.
Now, this is fine, and I must say that the use of Tak's feather as a health meter is a cool idea, but the heads-up display could be better in my opinion. It will show you when Tak receives damage, but it doesn't instantly update when you collect a feather. You can see your health percentage by pressing the left analog stick, but I think it would be more helpful if you had the option to see your health percentage at all times.
Bummer. Let me help you back up.
One other thing I wound up finding quite aggravating was that when Tak is defeated, the game doesn't respawn him at full health, and I really don't understand why.
There are different kinds of feathers you can find in the world.
The gold feathers are strictly for health restoration, while the others not only refill your health, but they're also used for mana points. You need these to perform Juju powers that you unlock as the game progresses, and I'll discuss these later. Tak can also pick up and throw items such as melons and coconuts. Simply pressing square will make him throw the item, and he'll automatically aim for the nearest object or enemy. But holding down the square button will allow you to aim beforehand. This is fine, but what I don't like is that Tak automatically picks up throwable items by running through them, and there were several times this got in the way. I'd much prefer it if you had to press a button to pick up an item.
Nice.
In spite of its condescending tutorial, I personally feel as though the game requires more explanation at times, particularly towards the beginning.
First, we need to go to the burial grounds to get the staff. I know the way. Follow me.
The central area is Tak's village, which acts as the hub area. The idea is to visit each of the surrounding locations and complete the required tasks, and it's fairly open in this respect. Once you get the hang of what needs doing, it's not so tough, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of kids were deeply confused about where to go and what to do.
This bucket will take us to the burial ground.
Our first task is to traverse the burial grounds and find a way to get into the Warrior King's tomb.
Gotcha.
At this stage, the club is our only weapon, and it's fairly weak. We're not exactly, armed to the teeth. Well, you'll laugh in a second. Finding the 4 teeth and placing them in the statues opens the tomb. We then obtain a new weapon, the staff, courtesy of the Warrior King himself.
Whoa.
Oh man, that's my fighting arm. What a drag.
I suppose that's a farewell to arms in more ways than one. You can switch between the club and the staff with the R1 button.
When in doubt, take the stick out. Boom, baby.
The staff can be used as a weapon, but its primary use is for pole vaulting, allowing you to jump higher and longer distances by holding the X button, and this works better than I expected. While a high jump upgrade is nothing new in a video game, the use of a pole vault is pretty creative. In order to turn Locke back into a human, we need to find 9 Nubu plants. And unfortunately for us, they're inside the mouths of larger plants that are sentient and dangerous. Yes, that's right, it's the Triffids trope again. You know what, it's starting to grow on me. Oh. Anyway, you'll find these plants in locations around the village, and they get progressively tougher to eliminate. The idea is to hit them when they taunt you. But this can be fairly difficult when there are so many obstacles and man-eating plants preventing you from approaching. Yeesh, talk about a little crop of horrors. One of this game's unique aspects is the use of local wildlife to get around. For example, you can ride rhinos to destroy tough obstacles. You can hit the rhino with your club to get it to pick up speed and clear a path. We also frequently encounter the orangutan. These guys will yank banana plants to access bananas, and you can use this to your advantage by standing on a leaf, allowing them to catapult you to out-of-reach places. If there are some melons lying around, you can use one to lure an orangutan to another plant to catapult you somewhere else. Then there are the rambunctious rams. These guys will charge at you and send you flying. Fortunately, you can also divert their attention with melons.
In other words, you can reroute the brute with a fruit.
Early on in the game, we also get to explore Lower Tree Village, where we discover that the people here have also been turned into sheep. Luckily, the village is abundant with sheep motors. If you place a sheep on the conveyor and hit it, it will activate a nearby door or elevator. But watch out, if the sheep goes anywhere near the orangutan, it will automatically grab it and catapult it. Sheep ahoy!
Don't worry though, the sheep don't mind. Believe me, they're used to this kind of thing.
While here, we find an unlimited supply of acorns.
Rocket! Woo!
Meaning we can use the staff as a blowgun to hit things that are far away. This is where I want to talk about the monkeys. If you hit a monkey in a tree, it will then proceed to throw a coconut at the nearest animal. Useful for diverting the attention of rams and orangutans. The blowgun is a little awkward, however. While you can aim the blowgun, tack seems to automatically target the nearest enemy, which is more of a setback than an asset. For example, at one point I was trying to take out a flying nurble nest, but despite manually targeting the nest, tack would automatically focus on the nurbles that emerged from it, meaning it took far longer than it should have.
That's the Eagle Eye Juju spell.
A little while later, you can also obtain the Eagle Eye power, which allows you to zoom back and forth, essentially using the blowgun like a telescope. It's kinda neat, I guess, but completely unnecessary. As soon as we have 9 Nubu plants, we can go back to Jibalba.
No, not Jibalba, Jibalba. They sound completely different.
With the plants, he can perform some kind of Nubu Voodoo Juju Hoodoo and transform Locke to his former self. But in a shocking twist, it turns out not to be Locke, but his squire Tobar. Or at least we think it is.
Tobar or not Tobar? That is the question.
Tobar, can you tell us what happened to Locke? Jibalba? You sure you did that spell right?
Jibalba then gives us a charm to permit us access to the shaman's tree in the tree village, and advises that we need to obtain his spirit rattle.
Jibalba's errand boy thinks he can just reach out and take that. It's pathetic.
Let me show him how wrong he is, Tlaloc.
This leads to a boss level against Tlaloc's henchmen, Pins and Needles, and this is kinda weird.
Tack? You don't look so good.
You need to run around and throw some magic stuff that makes your head balloon to gargantuan size.
Bullseye!
If you get hit twice, Tack will collapse under the weight of his own head. But as long as you make the moves before Pins and Needles, I'd say it's pretty easy.
Not to sound, big-headed or anything.
Tack! You did it! You beat Pins and Needles! Now you can get the mighty spirit rattle.
The spirit rattle replaces the club.
Gotcha.
It's far more powerful in close combat, and no doubt leaves the nurbles feeling,
Well, pretty rattled.
Boom, baby.
It can also be used to perform Juju spells, which we'll discuss as we get to them. After returning to Jibalba, we find that Locke has been crushed by sheep.
The spirit rattle will grant you Juju vision. You will be able to see the tikis and the magic yorbles throughout the world.
Okay, so once again, the exposition here gets a little confusing. It's not actually that hard to grasp, but it feels like Jibalba just throws so much information at you at once. We need to find our way to the spirit world and obtain Locke's spirit. And not only that, we also need to search the locations around the village to find 100 yorbles to bring Locke back from the dead.
Now, if I only knew what a yorble was.
Now and again, you'll find a tiki, and placing it in a shrine allows you to call upon Juju spirits who will help you. I say help, although a fair amount of these don't really seem particularly helpful.
I can out-Juju any Juju anywhere! Watch this!
It's clearly meant to be comedic, but as a result, the exposition is often conveyed in a very chaotic and confusing way.
Kiss my lucky baby boo!
I get the impression the developers were smoking some bad juju.
Anyway, it turns out this little annoying thing opens the path to Numa Dunes, which is an optional level. We can't actually access Numa Dunes until we have the sandboard, which you'd imagine would be a major setback. But I actually find this incredibly bizarre, as the sandboard is literally just a few feet away.
The long search is over. What a journey.
Numa Dunes is a place where you can find some more yorbles. And it's all downhill from here. In order to collect the Yorbles here, you need to perform some very precise tricks, and a lack of fluidity in the controls often precludes you from doing this. Ugh, well that went well. Performing tricks fills this meter, and it can fill twice. The first meter is blue, and the second time it fills it will be red. Holding R1 will then let you perform a turbo boost, enabling you to reach high up Yorbles. This is so awkward to pull off and really isn't worth the effort. The camera also doesn't help matters. It's positioned slightly overhead, which makes it difficult to find your bearings when all you can see is sand. I also find it very odd that the game insists on informing you when you're going the wrong way when you try to backtrack for a Yorble. I mean, it's a downhill slope, so it takes serious effort to turn around. I think you'd know which way you're going.
Yes, thank you, game. I know how gravity works.
Okay, so what about those Juju powers? There is a total of 16 powers to find, most of which require mana to use. These powers can help you a great deal in your quest. For example, one of the first Juju powers I found was the Restoration Dance. By selecting the power and holding the circle button, Tak's health will completely refill for a cost of 75 mana points. These powers are all very well and good, but I personally found it a little too restrictive.
Nice.
Initially, you can only carry a maximum of 2,000 mana points.
Fortunately, I keep my feathers numbered for just such an emergency.
And I managed to run out a number of times in some of the latter stages of the game. There are some Juju powers that don't require mana and simply make the gameplay easier. For example, there's the Mana Magnet, which makes Tak automatically collect feathers when he's near them.
But unfortunately, the majority come at a price, so you might want to mind your mana.
At this stage, I decided to get the spirit world over and done with.
That's the spirit!
Once the tiki is taken to the shrine in the burial grounds, the dead Juju unblocks the path to the mummy tombs.
I win! Oh yeah! I'm bad! I'm nationwide!
While here, we find the Spirit Sight Juju power. This means that when a Nurble is defeated, you will be able to see and collect its spirits for extra health and mana. Later in the game, you also find the Spirit Call Juju power, which draws the spirits in automatically, much like the Mana Magnet. And to be honest, they could easily have condensed these into one power. Anyway, this level is basically one long escort mission, in which we need to take 4 mummies one by one to a sacred tomb to open the spirit world, and this drags on for a while.
I've admittedly played worse escort missions, but escorting the dead is, well, dead boring.
One of my favourite mummies is one you have to escort over pits of lava. The sounds of his screams as he burns his feet are very amusing.
Yeah, buddy, when I said we'd hot-foot it out of here, this isn't what I had in mind.
Probably the most interesting of these is a mummy whose head has fallen off. Rather than follow you, he'll follow his head. It's not especially difficult, but it shakes things up a bit. And you know, with all the thick cobwebs and carvings of spiders, I think we know what's coming.
Yes, it must be a giant...
There are no giant spiders in this game.
Are you kidding? Again?
Yeah, as was the case with Project Zoo, despite there being a perfect justification for a giant spider, there surprisingly isn't one. I'm not angry, just disappointed.
Oh yeah.
This tomb is a web of lies!
With all the mummies in place, we can enter the spirit world. And this is actually really interesting. There are some pots here that contain evil spirits.
Look out!
The red ones emerge and shoot the nearest object, while the green ones temporarily turn you into a Nurble.
One of us.
Here you need to destroy some pots containing spirit keys.
Hey, Tak, look. I think that's a spirit key.
These open portals to something called Spirit Mode. As soon as you enter this mode, you'll find that some paths, objects, and animals will appear, sort of like an alternate universe scenario. The most similar comparison I could think of that I've covered before is the pantry in Disney's Haunted Mansion game, in which entering a portal makes things appear in one world that aren't visible in the other. Now, this might sound cool, but unfortunately Spirit Mode is timed.
Oh, damn it! Way to dampen my spirits.
This can get annoying with the orangutan, as you only have a limited amount of time to catapult yourself before he disappears, and he's so bloody slow.
This guy's gonna make me go ape. Or bananas.
Eventually this leads us to a really irritating part of the game.
Can you scratch my head?
We don't have time.
Come on, I can't reach it.
Oh, that's good.
As soon as we find Loc's spirit trapped in a helium balloon, the evil Tlaloc makes the task even harder by conjuring a path of thorns.
No!
You need to navigate the maze, avoiding the snapping plants and thorns,
Watch it, Zach. I don't want to go kablooey.
which is harder than you might think due to the strong gusts of wind constantly blowing the balloon back and forth.
Concussion number 1.
Once you get used to it though, it's not too bad. You just need to keep on your toes and run very closely to the plants. Once we've rescued Loc's spirit, we can focus on obtaining the 100 Yorbles, which unsurprisingly takes much longer. It weirdly feels like this happens out of sequence. I mean, you can collect 100 Yorbles before saving Loc's spirit, but since Yorble farming is far more time consuming, I imagine most kids would do this first.
Protect the head.
It's not a major complaint, but it just feels like saving Loc's spirit from the spirit world should happen much later.
Watch where I'm going, Tack.
Yeah, I'm afraid it looks like Loc's gonna have to stay in that balloon for a while.
Sorry, Loc. I don't mean to let you down. Or, not let you down. Whatever.
Obviously, the bigger this game gets, the more confusing it can seem. But fortunately, we can use the warp shrines to return to Tack's village.
It's a warp day.
And later on, after finding the warp mastery power, you can warp between the warp shrines in every location you've discovered. One thing that really bothered me here was that for some reason they decided to place a bunch of Nurbles right next to the warp shrine in Tack's village, meaning whenever I warped here, I was attacked every single time.
That's gonna leave a...
Seriously? Could they not have given you a bit of leeway here? I also think a map would come in really handy with getting used to the village and its neighbouring locales. In terms of navigation aids, the best that they give you is the Juju compass, a Juju power that makes Tack's feather act like a divining rod to find hidden collectibles. I didn't use this too often, but I did find it particularly useful when hunting for Yorbles in the tree village.
It might not be a map, but it's a step in the right direction.
One of the most memorable locations is Chicken Island, where chickens are worshipped for some reason. Here we meet the two-headed Juju, and one of the heads is very obviously voiced by the great Rob Paulson.
It's more powerful than the 7 skin-peeling stenches of the South.
Impossible!
I'm aware his filmography is pretty extensive, having been in so many memorable animated shows, such as Animaniacs.
Pull my finger.
But when I hear this voice, I can't help but hear Axel from Tasmania.
It sure is a beauty, Bull.
Using their, special powers, these guys open the way to Chicken Island West, and once we're there, we meet them again.
You'll wipe it.
You're gonna wipe it.
Yeah, while I appreciate much of the humour of this game, I do think they go a little overboard with the toilet humour.
Tack and the power of juvenile humour, more like. Am I right?
You suck!
Anyway, they then dare Tack to enter the outhouse.
Are you just a little chicken? Chicken little chicken?
You know what? It's funny you should mention Little Shittle, as Tack controls a lot like him. A little shit.
Yeah, okay, that's a bit harsh. In actuality, the controls are average, but often frustrating. Considering it was developed by the same company, this similarity possibly isn't a huge surprise. The stiffness of the controls feels exactly the same, as does the awkward double jump. The close combat attacks are also very alike. Tack's Spirit Rattle covers about as much of a radius as Little Shittle's yo-yo. And the Nurbles feel somewhat similar to the robot chickens. Even the menus adopt a similar layout. It's also interesting that they can both fire acorns. Although I'd say this is purely coincidental.
Talk about birds of a feather.
While we're on the subject of chickens, Tack uses the outhouses to get dressed into his chicken suit.
It's the Chicken Man!
With the suit, we can float over updrafts and glide by tapping the X button. We're also able to unleash explosive eggs with the square button. Should the chicken suit get wet, it will be destroyed, and you need to find an outhouse to get changed again. Oh, and speaking of eggs, if you decide to, monkey around here, you can find this cave, with a picture of a creepy monkey-dog hybrid in it. I stopped here for a while, thinking there was something to do here, but, nope. After looking into this, I found out that this is actually an Easter egg left by one of the developers, referencing a now-defunct art forum. Cool, I guess. Creepy, but cool. And where better to find an Easter egg than in a chicken level?
Perhaps you've noticed, I like eggs.
Well, here we also find the conversion power, which we can use to turn the Nurbles into chickens. Now, you might be wondering why this would be beneficial. Well, as soon as the nurbles are turned into chickens, they're essentially eliminated. But considering this costs a whopping 150 mana points, I didn't tend to use it very often. There are some other powers that make fighting nurbles much easier, although they can also prove rather costly.
Wow, too cool. You now have Thunder Strike.
The Thunder Strike causes your close combat moves to trigger an explosion. Meanwhile, the Spirit Strike power can be found in the Upper Tree Village, and this is an attack that homes in on enemies, especially useful for fighting flying nurbles or taking out large groups from afar.
Booyah!
Speaking of the Upper Tree Village, it's here we meet my favourite Juju.
Why, hello.
He's a little, temperamental, and after realizing that Tak isn't going to free him, he vanishes, but not before making all the coconuts in the world explosive.
I'll fry you alive!
Alright then?
Yeah, this guy's nuts. That's one way to go out with a bang.
Anyway, shortly afterwards we progress to the mountaintop, where we need a snowboard to access Powder Canyon.
I need a snowboard.
I might help you, but first you must help me.
Here we meet this Juju again, and this time he asks us for a pet.
How about a nice fish?
No problem.
And a sheep.
Okay.
And an emu. And a rhinoceros.
What?
We simply need to find and return all of the animals he requests in exchange for the snowboard. This is a little time consuming, but fairly straightforward. Oh, and the emu is an interesting one. These animals are rarely seen. In fact, the only other notable emu I can recall is in Dry Rock Canyon, in which it can be used to jump long distances to obtain some out-of-reach items.
Woohoo!
Such as Yorbles and the Fire Acorn spell, which upgrades the blowgun ammo.
Excellent. These will be fine pets. What a handsome emu.
Anyway, with all of the animals rounded up, we receive the snowboard, which permits us access to Powder Canyon. This is basically just like Numa Dunes, and just as annoying. Why we couldn't just use a sandboard here, I really don't know.
I also find it kind of funny that this is only the third game I've covered this year, and already this is a second snowy slope level we've seen. Is it really any surprise that this was the #1 spot in my top 10 Christmas video?
Great!
One location I haven't talked about much yet is Dry Rock Canyon. That's because I really don't like it here. As well as nurbles and rams, there are a lot of hazards, including cacti that spit hazardous balls at you. On the plus side though, there's a hidden Juju power here called Longer Life.
Ooh, good one.
Which allows Tak to receive more damage before keeling over. Retrieving the Tiki here makes the two-headed Juju appear again, and this time they allow you access to Dry Rock Caverns.
Mr. Tak? Party of one?
Hey, zoop, he just took off. I don't know. Same thing that happens every time we open this door.
This is one of the most annoying areas of the game in my opinion. I love the atmosphere, but the gameplay is beyond frustrating. You need to navigate the darkness by chasing a light, avoiding all the nurbles along the path.
Sweet!
Should you wind up left behind in the darkness, the nurbles will eat you alive. You need to do this 3 times to unlock the Stunner power. This can be used in combat to temporarily stun groups of enemies. With 100 Yorbles, we can return to Jibolba. And Locke is resurrected as Patrick Warburton.
Hey! Oh.
If you couldn't already tell, this was the early noughties.
It is so good to be me.
Wow, that's quite the inflated ego for somebody who's just been... well, inflated.
Unfortunately, resurrection has its disadvantages, and Locke falls victim to a severe case of, Resurrection's revenge.
I am the mighty warrior called for by the Papoo. Oh, Papoo, boo. Oh no.
Yeah, he takes so long in the bathroom that Jibolba instead gives Tak the next task.
This magic amulet will help. It increases your abilities when you're at full strength.
Oh, it's like lava, baby.
Wait, hold up. So we've spent more than half the game trying to save Locke so he can do this task that we wound up doing anyway?
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
With the amulet, we can not only access the locations of the 3 moonstones, but at full health, Tak's abilities are amplified. Leaving a blazing trail behind him, Tak can run much faster and jump farther. This is cool and all, but it just makes it all the more frustrating that you're not respawned at full health when you die. Anyway, the first moonstone I decided to look for was somewhere in Dry Rock Canyon. Ringing the gong opens the Sun Temple.
Greeting, you aliens from other planet.
Oh, not that Sun Temple! That's the one!
And this is really annoying. Touching the sun-scorched floor will burn Tak's feet, meaning it's very easy to lose health. Considering this location contains a number of timed puzzles, this is very irritating. Throughout the temple, you'll also find these jars filled with oil. When thrown over the heated floors, this will cause a fire that helps to eliminate nurbles. This is okay, but it's a little frustrating when you need to defeat them within a certain time limit. It's a little awkward to aim when the nurbles are constantly moving around. And the very last area before the boss room is the worst. There are so many nurbles, and you need to beat them all before time runs out to access the boss room.
Sweet.
As you can imagine, things get pretty heated.
Okay, stud, you got one chance before I show them how it is done.
The boss room that follows is also a spectacular pain in the arse. The idea is to ride around on this stupid bird and collect ammo to fight Needles, who's also riding a stupid bird.
Stupid bird.
The various ammo has different properties. The yellow ones are basic ammo, the blue ones home in on Needles, the red ones split into 3, and the green ones explode, which I personally found to be more to my detriment.
Stupid bird.
Once Needles is beaten, you need to do exactly the same thing against Pins. And then finally, you need to defeat Pins and Needles together. If you fail at any point, the game respawns you at the very beginning of the boss fight.
Come on! Get back on your phoenix, you can still beat him!
Naturally, since the final part of the fight is by far the toughest, you're most likely to fail here, and starting all over again is a chore.
Oh no! I guess we need more practice.
Trust me, it was a relief when this was over.
Yes! You collected a moonstone! Pins and Needles are no match for you.
Stupid bird.
The next moonstone I decided to look for is on the mountaintop. Ringing the gong takes us to Mountaintop North, and this is fortunately much simpler than the Sun Temple. You need to activate this wheel on the ground. Lining up the coloured symbols will temporarily open the matching coloured doors. The idea is to race to the doors before they close and activate the switches inside them to raise the platforms. And this eventually leads to a button sequence challenge.
Sassy!
You need to press the corresponding buttons as they enter the highlighted area. Every correct button moves a platform forwards, the idea being to beat Pins and Needles' platform to the moonstone.
Oh, that's gotta hurt.
And yeah, it's pretty awful.
Wouldn't you agree, Sebastian?
Jumping jellyfish, that was good.
Oh, I'm asking the wrong guy here.
By the way, at this stage of the game, we gain access to some more unnecessary powers, including Summon Melon and Summon Coconut.
Oh, now you can summon a fire coconut anytime you need one.
Most often, whenever you need a melon, there will be some situated nearby anyway, so I didn't really use this power much at all, but it actually came in surprisingly handy for a very different reason. When I was backtracking for Yorbles, I realised I missed one in the mummy tombs, and it required me to use something to weigh down a pressure pad. Realising that I was supposed to have used the mummy's head for this task on my initial visit, I feared I'd missed out on a Yorble, but thanks to this power, I found another solution.
Okay, that's all the Yorbles here. We should try somewhere else now.
Aha! That's using your melon.
The third and final moonstone is located somewhere on Chicken Island. Ringing this gong opens the Chicken Temple, and this gets extremely frustrating. Initially, it's not too bad, just a little repetitive and time-consuming.
It looks like you need to find a key.
The yellow chicken eggs act like keys. You need to steal the eggs from the chickens and place them in the frying pans one by one. Each one raises a central platform, and as you go higher, it gets tougher. There are guards patrolling the area, and they cannot be eliminated. You can temporarily stun them with orange explosive eggs, but there's rarely an opportunity to do so. Not only do you need to avoid the guards along the way, but the chickens themselves are extremely protective of their eggs, and they are supremely irritating.
Chicken supreme. Anybody else hungry?
It's much easier to do this at full health, as Tak is able to outrun them, but since Tak is never revived at full health, and there's a noticeable lack of feathers in this place, they're harder to avoid than you might expect.
Oh, honestly, if it ain't chickens, it's feathers.
Wait, how come there aren't many feathers around? This place is full of chickens!
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
This level gets even more frustrating when you need to use the chickens to weigh down pressure pads. The idea is to hit them, and then, when they're in the air, hit them again to project them over pitfalls. A little later on, you need to use the blowgun on the chickens to get them to follow you.
Hey, Tak, try shooting the chickens to see what happens.
I'm honestly so glad Flora gave me direct instructions here, because until then, I was really struggling. Hitting the chicken from afar makes it run towards you and pass out, but even when I knew what to do, this was still a chore. The chickens don't run for long, so this activity takes a lot of patience. I just wish Tak would be able to pick the chickens up. I mean, you can pick up a sheep, why not a chicken?
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
What's also really aggravating is that once you've placed the chicken on a pressure pad, if you get too close to the chicken with egg in hand, the chicken will wander off, and you need to get a chicken to follow you all over again.
Grrr. If you guys don't pipe down, I'll set Mrs. Tweedy on you.
Chickens.
And believe me, you don't want to be a pie.
I don't like gravy.
Some pressure pads temporarily open doors, and the time constraints are pretty tight. This is frustrating when Tak's movements are so janky and awkward, like this part that requires you to grab and climb a rope. For some reason, Tak would not grab hold of it, and yet I swear I was close enough. I'm not kidding here, I was genuinely yelling at the TV while playing this level. I absolutely hated it. Just grab the rope!
I think I'm gonna reach the end of my rope before he grabs that one.
It doesn't help that Flora tries to help you by saying some ironically very unhelpful things. Like, I was struggling with beating the time limits, and she just said this.
Hey, Tak, remember the explosive eggs from the chicken suit? I wonder what one of those would do to a guard.
Huh? What will that achieve? And you know what? I don't actually know why we never got to use the chicken suit again here. I mean, considering the fact that chickens are clearly revered, it seems the perfect disguise to bypass the guards and reach the boss room.
Oh no, Tak, look! It's pins and needles again.
Which, by the way, is also pretty annoying. Pins and needles will float around and throw explosive eggs at you.
How do you like that, huh?
If you manage to lure these eggs into the nests, you can retrieve them yourself. Then pins and needles will hover around the chickens to obtain more eggs. They will hover around the chickens that are illuminated, and you need to put the egg in the right place and catapult it towards them to burst their balloons.
And I can assure you, pins and needles aren't the only ones to be feeling deflated. I'm glad that's over. This level is a rotten egg.
Anyway, with all 3 moonstones, we can summon the Moon Juju, who reveals that Locke is not the warrior the prophecy speaks of.
But the prophecy says...
Doesn't say anything about Locke. Tak is the mighty warrior of the Pupanunu people's prophecy.
I'm sure everyone is shocked.
This also raises another good question. We now know that finding 100 Yorbles to save Locke was pretty pointless, but there are still another 100 Yorbles left to collect. And they never make you aware of any incentive to do so. I mean, it's obvious we should still be collecting them, but why? It's not exactly a major complaint of mine, it just seems odd to me that nobody informs you of any reason for collecting them all. If you do manage to obtain all 200 Yorbles in the game, you unlock storyboards for the game's cutscenes, and these can be accessed in the extras menu.
Locke, the mighty warrior, has been mindlessly eating grass and leaving little pellets all over the floor of my hut. So I guess he's doing okay for a sheep.
Now, I have to admit, in order to access the storyboards myself, I did wind up using a cheat, which isn't something I'm proud of. I managed to collect all of the Yorbles in all but 2 levels, Numa Dunes and Powder Canyon. That's right, the surfboarding levels. I think I'd be more lenient about these levels if they didn't contain compulsory items for 100% completion. Without the collectibles, this might be pretty fun. But as it is, it's incredibly frustrating. I spent so long looking for Yorbles in these levels that I eventually gave up. It's simply not worth it. There are also a couple of Juju powers to be found in these levels. Once again, I didn't find these myself, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't have been able to reach them. In Powder Canyon, you find a Juju power called the Mana Pouch, which allows you to carry more mana.
Boom, shakalaka. Oh moon!
This would have come in really handy. It's just a pity they apparently decided to hide it in one of the toughest locations in the game. And in New Majunes, you can find the Crazy Feet power. This allows Tack to run faster and jump farther, although this feels a little unnecessary to me, especially once you have the amulet.
Still, I suppose it's another feather in your cap.
You're ready to face Tlaloc now.
Anyway, let's talk about the final boss.
This is too sudden. I wasn't prepared.
First of all, I must say it's pretty creative. Tlaloc uses his magic plants to create an army of Nurbles.
So hold on a minute, we've got purple Nurbles, hurtle Nurbles, fertile Nurbles, nocturnal Nurbles, and herbal Nurbles. Cool!
Naturally, you need to destroy the plants. It's not so easy though, as Tlaloc casts a spell that turns you into a chicken. After running to the next location, you need to take out more magic plants with the blowgun.
Run, Tack! Run!
Once again, with these animal spells, I'm getting Cusco vibes.
I'm a turtle.
The remaining plants are reinforced by protective shields, and you can only destroy them by luring Tlaloc's magic towards them. With the plants taken care of, Flora is turned into an orangutan.
I feel strange.
After Tack is catapulted, he's imbued with the power to turn the enemies into sheep. And I actually like this ending. After having experienced so many annoying orangutans stealing your sheep, it's humorously ironic that this is how Tlaloc is defeated.
Bye-bye, Tlaloc!
And to top it off, the rams all start making, sheep's eyes at him.
Aw, look, Tack! Tlaloc's made some new friends!
The game ends with Tack triumphantly singing the 1812 Overture by Tchaikovsky for some reason. And that's kind of it. I did think there might be another cutscene after finding all the Yorbles, perhaps depicting Tack going back to Jibolba for a true celebration. But that just doesn't happen, to my knowledge anyway. In any case, Tlaloc has been defeated.
Bet now he's feeling sheepish.
Rock on!
I'm actually extremely conflicted about this game. There are aspects that I hugely appreciate. The characters and the world itself are interesting, and I love the concept of using the local wildlife to progress. But most often I found the gameplay very frustrating. Tack doesn't control very fluidly, and the tasks are rather repetitive. Many of the Juju powers are cool, but they often feel unnecessary, or they cost so much mana that they just don't feel worth using. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's extremely aggravating at times, but I'd still consider this game to be underrated. The uneven difficulty may ruffle a few feathers, but on the whole, this game is a good egg.
That's the spirit!
Hey everyone! I am genuinely pretty sad that I couldn't finish this game 100%, but honestly, I gave it a good go. Even when editing this video, I tried New Majunes again, and after half an hour or so, I found just one more Yorble and decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna throw in the towel. I would have preferred it if they gave you the Yorbles and Juju powers as rewards for doing certain tricks and achieving high scores. I understand you need to use the tricks to reach the items, but it feels as though the tricks alone should reward you with something. Anyway, a huge thank you for 7,000 subs. I really didn't expect to have another Milestone video this soon. Thanks as always to my patrons, Anthony Gallagher, Eagle, 3Spooky5Me, Volico72, and Matthew Shaw. And to my free patrons, Dee's Nuts, Heather McKnight, Hannah Kingdon, Michael Shields, Dennis, GamerKid96, and Mood Faik. And to my channel members, 3Spooky5Me, Leo Tucker, and Reunion. Thanks for your patience everyone, this one took a while. In any case, I hope to be back soon. Bye bye for now.
Stupid bird.